Here's my dark leisure theory of any potential productivity paradox in AI. Most AI use right now is bottom up and hidden. Employee first, not company first. Employees vibe code, vibe market, vibe right, and get stuff done faster. In many orgs, there's too little incentive to pass on these productivity gains by telling your manager, I found this neat tool that let me do eight hours of work in 3 hours. Give me more work. Yes, some ambitious folks do and get promotions through this, but most people aren't ambitious, just want to be left alone. Instead, those say 5 extra hours become dark leisure hours, browsing the web, being on X, Reddit, sports. Will these companies eventually get replaced by other companies? Yes, but the process will take longer than folks in our bubble expect. So this is actually the reverse of the question that was asked. It was not saying are people going to, it's actually people are using this and becoming more productive, but they're just spending that time to dick around on the internet.
Let's get going. So we've got AMA part 2. Thanks for everyone submitting questions here. Let's get straight into it, lads. This is going to be random order. China and energy. Starting off hot. Here we go. What do you think about China dominating energy sector? They are 2 to 5x ahead of everyone in energy production, are racing ahead like no tomorrow. Our governments are so behind in the future. This is a long question. Sorry. Our governments are so behind in infrastructure that tech companies themselves have to buy nuclear plants to support themselves in the future, which is good, but also bad because if government doesn't develop that, it means price control will entirely be out of their hands. You get the idea of the question.
Yeah.
What do we think of China and energy? Definitely not qualified to talk about this. I have absolutely no idea. But curious if either of you read much about this or know much about it.
Yeah, I got some strong thoughts, unsurprisingly. But before I go on a rant, I'll have Jack. What are your thoughts, Jack?
Well, I'm not studied in this subject whatsoever, but through my copious amounts of sailor inhalation.
Yes.
We know the key to a prosperous society is the production and consumption of energy. So we got to close the gap.
This is true.
That's my only commentary on the subject, and I will defer to the learned experience of Mr. Phan.
Again, this is all not energy policy advice, but let me walk through a couple of things. Yes, China has a massive lead, or will, because of their solar production. The world leader in solar, which I think everyone on this chat knows, many listeners know, and they've completely raced ahead on nuclear rollout. I think they're going to be responsible for, 80% of all the nuclear plants that we built in the next 2 decades currently. Having said that, the Trump administration has written a number of executive orders to bring back nuclear, to remove the regulation for nuclear development, because, a lot of people say it, right? If aliens were looking at planet Earth and they saw that we had nuclear and that we stopped using it, they would be so confused. Abundant, clean, and doesn't have the flaws of solar, which is intermittent, right? The sun doesn't always shine, and the wind doesn't always blow. And a couple of things worth talking about here is the energy vis-a-vis the AI race. You guys remember what we talked about last week? AI in the Middle East. I think you guys had thoughts on that.
Yeah.
The U.S. government signed a $600 million. What is this? A fucking deal for ants? $600 billion to put AI data centers in the UAE and in Saudi Arabia. So let me just, a little softball. Why are they doing this deal in the Middle East? Why are they allowing the Middle East to become the third pillar of the AI race between China and America? On your plate.
So they got that money, son. What else?
Money and what else?
You mean political power? Like
energy.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
They have energy. That's the game, right? So China is actually they don't have a ton of natural resources like America does. Like America,
they have to import everything pretty much.
Yeah, they have to import. I think they import 70-80% of their oil, but nuclear is their hedge against that geopolitical risk, right? That's why they're going balls to the wall nuclear. And mind you, this doesn't mean that there aren't costs to this. Like, if you want to hear or watch something crazy, look what China did to build the Three Gorges Dam. The number of people displaced, the amount of earth that was moved. So I think this is the largest dam in the world for hydroelectric power. But anyways, read about that. And the point that we've talked about here is like the Chinese Communist Party, if they decide to do something, they will move heaven and earth to do it. Does not matter what the individual citizens care about. So to answer the initial question, yeah, it is a problem. America is trying to address it by these executive orders that Trump has done, and also they're trying to address it. I mean, the show. Do you guys remember when, like 10 years ago, people were like, "We've reached peak oil"? Do you guys remember that? It was like we're out of oil. The world's going to run out of oil. And America, why did I mean?
They found some since then.
Let me ask Bilal, why did Dave Chappelle think that America went to war in Iraq?
Because of oil, getting oil.
So that was a joke, right? He's oil, bitch. Bitch, what do you mean oil? Right? It's like
it might not be completely off. To be fair, there might be some.
It's not completely about oil, but let's be honest, a large part of it was about oil. But what happened? The shale revolution happened, and America is now a net exporter of oil, completely meets its own needs, and they're basically swing producers with Saudi Arabia. That's how large they've gotten, right? And let me just tie this off with energy. Yes, to Jack's point, that underpins civilization. A lot of Western societies have totally, I mean, not to say that climate change isn't a problem, but when you do what Germany did, you guys remember what Germany did famously in the past decade? They completely shuttered their nuclear power plants, right?
Why is that, Trunk? What was the driving force?
The driving force. If we want to get a little bit conspiratorial, a lot of people think that the Russians were paying these green climate change groups in Western Europe to basically talk down on nuclear.
I was going to say. I thought you were just going to say Greta. Yeah.
There you go, Greta. Big Greta. All these climate change goals, nuclear wasn't included in it for some reason. France never did. France kept 70% of their energy, electricity still comes from nuclear. They're like, okay, this is dumb. It's like, no, we're not going to get rid of nuclear. And then what happens when Germany yoked themselves to Russia's natural gas? We all know what happened the past 3 years. So
Germany also sold the stone cold Bitcoin bottom, boys. I don't know if you know that one.
Sold it. Germany sold the Bitcoin stone cold at the bottom. So Germany literally committed industrial suicide by getting rid of their nuclear power plants. Having said that, the new chancellor is now speaking with the French and the EU to include nuclear within the climate change goals, which it should have been from the very beginning.
What you know? What's crazy about this? The mental disconnect between energy consumption and quality of life. Insane, no? Like it's such a basic premise.
That last one, that same line.
I think the thing that's really hard to understand is that this is like a pervasive mental disconnect between how much energy you consume and the quality of your life, or quality of life as a metric. To think that you can divert from that relationship. There's a guy wrote a book. Is it Alex Epstein? Do you know that guy? Have you seen him around the timeline before? I heard the name.
I forgot the title of the book you're talking about.
The book is about Fossil Future is the name of the book. He's like on the circuit, basically making this historic argument that civilization has advanced with its consumption of fuel. Very like, I don't know, maybe I'm the idiot here and everybody else sees this as obvious, but like consumption of energy and the ability to store and use energy into the future is how you improve the quality of your life, the life expectancy of your people, all of these things.
I think especially as we go into the age of AI, obviously that becomes even more important because, just the ability
hungry.
to
intelligence.
Intelligence is what is powered by energy, obviously. I think David Freeberg actually has talked about this quite a good amount on All In. I think he's David Freeberg, science guy, right? So him and Chamath have had some back and forth on this, but I do think. It's obviously incredibly important for us to be able to have this sustainably. And I think the big gap right now in the last few years has just been the policy stuff, like you said. Europe's had their own issues with that, which has obviously become an issue now with the war in Russia and Ukraine. It's very.
But Bella, I want to pin exactly the point you brought up. Is the larger message here is this: it's not to say that climate change isn't real. You just can't commit national economic suicide pursuing these goals, right? It's like, because now the threat of climate change is the world's gonna be unlivable for our children in 30, 40, 50 years. Okay, so is the solution to make it unlivable for them right now? Like what kind of solution is that? The dumbest shit I've ever heard in my life. Is like, no, I'm serious, right? I'll give you an example. Canada under Trust Fund Trudeau was extremely climate friendly. Climate change was the number one priority, right? Is like climate change is the number one threat to our way of living. So they put a carbon tax on the energy industry, and there's all these rules around how much energy can be pumped, oil, etc. Canada contributes less than 1% of the world's climate carbon and whatever the green gases, carbon dioxide, etc. Right, methane. So here's a solution, right? This is such an obvious solution. Instead of blocking the pipes for the natural gas to go to other markets, build them, pump the shit out of it, send it to India, who's using a lot of coal, and you're going to reduce the amount of global, right, climate change impact without destroying your economy. It's like this thinking, it's just completely slipping the mind of Western leaders because they've been fully sold for various different reasons on the climate agenda without even thinking that, okay, yeah, we'll make sure the Earth is livable in 50 years by making it completely unlivable for populations now.
Obviously, Trung nuclear has been pretty hot in the last few years. No pun intended. But what is the... Yeah. What do you think long term is this? Is it really just solar?
No, it's got to be nuclear is nuclear is going to be.
What was, because I saw Elon Musk post this. Did you read his tweet on this?
Yeah,
it was a few days ago.
Solar energy. It's okay, to answer that question, unless we can wrap up to the next one is.
Yeah.
Well, let's give an example. Here's a big thing. Did you guys see what happened on the Iberian Peninsula last?
So by the way, I've got a tweet, so we can just reference it real quick. I'm just going to pull this up here. Can you guys see this? It says solar power is so obviously the future for anyone who can do elementary math. And there's a chart here: China solar going through the roof, US nuclear staying flat.
Wow, look at that.
US solar, China nuclear. So yeah, definitely click in to see this. We can share the tweet. Rafa, I'll share this with you. But yeah, just wanted to reference that.
No, this is worth addressing because we talked earlier about how solar and wind is intermittent, right? The challenge is this. The challenge is how to gap over to solar. I agree with Elon that solar with battery technology at scale will be the best long-term solution. But the time between now and then, that's going to take decades because the grids themselves have to be updated. I'll give you the very simple analogy or example. You guys saw what happened in Spain and Portugal last month, right? You had 72 hours complete blackouts of the grid. And that came less than a week after Spain had announced to the world that they had their first day ever where 100% of the energy grid was from renewables. And that's an amazing achievement. But the reason they had that brownout, one of the major reasons, is that you need completely different grids to accommodate solar. It changes the economics of a grid, because if a grid, you know what, Bilal, what's negative energy? You can sell back to the grid with solar. You've heard this, right?
Yeah.
Right. That's always like a pitch people have. Put some solar panels on your roof, and if you have extra energy, you can sell it back to the grid, right? But the problem is that it changes the complete economics of a grid, and a grid needs a base load, which is effectively just the steady base load, which right now is run by steam turbines, often coal-powered. But the problem, I'm just making the point, is that you're trying to change an entire grid to accommodate solar, which is intermittent, and that's going to take decades. I agree with Elon, but I think in the meantime, he's also a big nuclear guy, that nuclear can be that base load rather than coal, for example, or natural gas, that can help make that jump. So anyways, that's our not energy policy advice corner. Total, please chat GPT everything I just said. But let's move on to the next question.
Yeah, no, great answer. Jack, anything else on that before I move on? All right, this one's for Jack from Johnny Stockton. This is a fun one for Jack. What's with the skateboard wall art of Jack's in the background in the previous episodes? Does he skate? What's his best trick?
back in the day, boys. I was a heel flip was about the top.
Oh
of
yeah,
my,
you actually did skate though.
Top of my game, yeah. Yeah.
Well, what were you listening to at that stage? Limp Bizkit? What was the
Linkin Park, Limp
Linkin
Bizkit.
Park, there we go.
And then I moved
Classics.
into the pop punk era. You know all of that. Sum
Avril
41.
Lavigne, mate. What are we talking?
Sum 41.
Sorry.
What else?
Do
I could probably pop up a little playlist. Funeral for a Friend. I had the UK emo little streak of that for a little bit. But those skateboards are done by a company. I think it's in Belgium. Maybe it's called the Skate Room, if I remember rightly. And they like license these artworks from artist foundations. That's a Basquiat painting turned into these, I think it's 5 boards. And then I think they donate or the vast majority of the proceeds to different charities. But the URL is theskateroom.com. And the reason I bought that one, it's got the VV aesthetic, the white on black. And I'm a huge Basquiat enjoyer.
Have you still got these hung up somewhere?
They're still in the same room. Yeah, I just doing the pod in a different place now. Yeah, they'll be up. They'll continue to stay up, boys, and maybe I'll.
What an incredible, insightful question, by the way. How did they? Yeah, wow.
The questions in this AMA were really good, by the way. Like from last week, this week, people have been picking up some really good ones.
Listener.
Honestly. Really, really good. All right, nice one, Jack. Thanks for sharing that. Switching gears here. So, thoughts on AI displacing jobs and population decline specifically. So, more context to the question says, it comes up very often and you've talked about it, but no one talks about how population is in decline in the world and we might need AI to eke out more work/productivity per human. Since learning something from usual route will take 4 to 5 years, AI is improving much faster than that. All of our listeners are so much smarter than us, man.
Dude, this is
stuff they're coming up with is so good.
One, actually.
Go on.
So this is a great question. On the population decline part, as many people probably know at this point, we're going to peak at I think 9 billion in following decades, but the fertility replacement rates are just dismal. Blah. Do you know some of the worst ones? Can you just rattle off the top of your head?
Well, China's kind of screwed.
South Korea. I think South Korea right now.
Obviously, China had the one-child policy for a long time.
China had one-child policy. They had to change that. Vietnam actually a week ago took the cap off their child policy. They had it at 2, so they also had population control. Again, just communist states doing population control stuff, right? Not good. But the question about fertility rates is like you need 2.1 to basically sustain your existing population, right? 2.1, 0.1 being the expectation that you'll have some infant mortality and some people, some births will not make it to adult age. So when you're below that, your civilizations, the populations will collapse over time. Some are more aggressive than others. I think South Korea's replacement rate right now is under 0.5.
Yeah, well, I'm looking at right now. This is 2024 estimated 0.72, lowest in the world. South Korea. Hong Kong 0.76, Singapore 0.87.
Do you know how crazy that is?
Taiwan,
that means that
0.87.
populations will decline by 90% within 3 generations. Something crazy like that.
That's crazy.
That's
the reverse compound interest there, yeah?
Exactly. There are more dog owners in South Korea, I think, amongst the millennials than parents. It's some of the grimmest shit you'll ever see in your life.
What's the like consensus on the reason there specifically?
Urbanization is just hand in hand is one of the big ones. Urbanization and
the work culture is crazy, isn't it? And
higher incomes. No, why South Korea? No, so they're also one of the most urbanized and one of the richest countries. This seems to be the. But you're right. There's also cultural elements, but they've had previously decades.
It's the intro to Idiocracy, basically, perfectly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. well, why don't you tell listeners exactly the scene by scene beats?
Go on. Well, I was just going to say really quickly on that because you said originally communism, right? So more authoritarian control makes sense for like China and stuff. But what about like Singapore? That's not really the same, right? They've got their own.
Wealth and urbanization
Japan,
again. wealth and
Japan is
urbanization.
not that bad, 1.26. Still, what they need to be at 2 to 1 though, right?
Yeah,
So,
no, their society is gonna have in like 30 years. But,
Instagram, boys, is the problem.
oh yeah, Instagram. No, but seriously,
US is 1.63, UK 1.76, and the EU is 1.46. Now, obviously, for the Western countries specifically, this isn't taking into account immigration, right?
immigration. Yeah,
That's
well,
a
this
big
is the
part of this
argument
puzzle.
why people are saying, there should be. I mean, well, it is a valid argument. You need immigration to keep countries go. But the thing is, immigration is zero sum, right? As in, that means the immigrants are leaving their countries, right? And then the other kicker to this, we haven't even got the AI part. Africa is going to end up being half the world's population because
That's
I
I
mean,
was asking the opposite. Who's got the most? So
yeah, it is right. Can you rattle it off?
Niger 6.6, Chad 6.1,
Yeah.
Congo
Chad.
6, Somalia 5.9. People getting it going over here.
the
Nigeria
argument is because they
5.3.
know a lot. I mean, in those cultures, because economies are not as developed, you need children. You're
To look
your kids
after
are your
you and-
assets, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, but as they get richer, that becomes less of a thing. So let's talk about the AI
Yeah.
component.
Yeah.
My
Interesting,
answer-
because in Western culture, it's framed the other way around, right? It's like, I'm waiting until I have
yeah,
Enough security and
the
financial
the
means.
truth of it is actually obscured, or like the reason for having children is inverted almost, or at least the premise that people arrive at is very different.
Oh,
Yeah.
in the cultures, yeah, 100%. No, that's a great point.
I was just going to say real quick, the reason, I know we kind of summarized some of the reasons in the West, but I'm just, as we're talking, I think you guys mentioned this, but like delayed marriage, parenthood, obviously in urban areas in Western world, especially increased education and career focus, especially for women, because women previously, like you go back 2 generations, weren't working as much. Now they focus on a career, have kids later. Right, and this I think is actually a big one. Rising cost of living and childcare in the Western world specifically, I think is actually quite a valid one. Even if it is perception-wise, like speaking to people, a lot of people will say, well, I'm going to wait. I'm just getting out of debt from student loans, right? And so the idea, our old friend Gary, economics, comes up like this idea, which to be fair, we reference him a few times and like kind of make jokes sometimes, but I will say like he's calling out an actual issue, which is
Wait,
the
who?
solution to issue. He's the Gary's economics guy who's been going on
The
a
British
tour.
guy.
Yeah. He's essentially calling out, the gap in rich and poor, which is obviously also true. The solution to it is what people will differ on with his opinion. But yeah, so I will say that is probably a big driver of this as well, because as people are just struggling to do normal stuff, like they can't even look after themselves basically as normal adults, half the population. So then you're thinking, I need to bring in a person as
you know
well.
what we need to
Plana
let's throw it.
burritos.
We gotta
Exactly.
Let's blame the blameful party here. Boomers. Give your kids money for the love of God.
There we go.
A friend of the pod, Adam Singer, tweets about this once a quarter. But dude, what are you holding on to the money for?
Have you read Die with Zero, Trunk? You read that?
Yeah, Bill Perkins. We should bring him on. Actually, he's a little
Yeah, we
legend.
should. Good book, man.
Wow, what's the
Legendary
thesis?
guy.
What's the thesis?
Well, one of the things he talks about is, a lot of personal finance books is about how to save and invest, and his is all about how to actually make the most of the money that you've accumulated over your lifetime.
Hook your
and
kids up.
And a big part of it, he's saying, is it's just the social norm is you wait until you're dead to give your kids stuff after you die, which kind of made sense for a long time. But now as the gap between the generations has got wider, he was saying even just having a part of it allocated before would make a massive difference now. It's, time value of money, etc. You can
Bilal,
say that.
I agree with that 100. The title, right? Die with Zero.
Yeah.
I will say this. I'm not saying give your kids money and don't let them do nothing. I'm saying it's so hard now to own a freaking home because, if you're in the 1980s in any coastal city, you threw a dart on a board and you're 10xing your property, as we've joked about here, right? It's like, and you got your 401ks catching the greatest bull market in history, and now your kids are walking. Your kids need to YOLO into freaking toads to try to make a living here. Like, what is going on?
No, but
right?
you're right. We're obviously joking about this, but this is the central thesis of the whole podcast,
Yes.
basically, right?
Why
Like
is
we're
Starcoin
covering the
worth
stuff,
$1 billion?
all the
Just
stuff
kid-
that people go to because of like these underlying things. So
Well, you know
yeah, no,
that-
that's a good point. Go on, Jack.
You've heard the Buffett line on inheritance. Do you know that one?
Oh, it's
Yeah,
a
it was
banger.
but hit it. Yeah, hit it. That's the best one.
Give your kids enough to do something, but not enough to do nothing.
Unbelievable.
go.
There you go.
Banger.
It's so
There's a
good.
banger.
Banger.
It's so true.
Well, we haven't even talked about AI partners, so let's try to adjust
Go on.
that. So let's do this. Actually, sorry, let's do this because there's so many questions to get to. Let's just snap this quickly. Yes, I think the argument that you need robotics, if robotics to replace some labor, and B, you also need AI to make labor more productive because there's less. Tons of credence to that. And the only thing I'd say to cap that off is let's watch what Japan does in the next 5 to 10 years, because as everyone joked about, everyone says Japan has been dealing with the problem the West has since the 1990s. Falling birth rates, a post-economic bubble, rising debt load at a national level. What Japan does is very instructive, and they've highly roboticized their society. And not to say that you copy everything Japan does, but they're going through the problem that all these other countries are facing. But yeah, I agree. Mostly just agreeing with the initial question. AI could be a solution, and that's a bull case for Tesla, frankly, if Optimus actually does deliver.
And the mega hopium answer is life extension, right?
Well, I mean, that's also a negative because life extension just means
You got to look
have
after the older people.
Yeah, you have people that are older and not working. So a lot
What
of
about
questions.
age reversal then? How about I frame it like that?
Yeah, that's true. Well, no, you're right, because then this idea of people. Well, I guess the premise of the question is: do younger people in society need to be productive to pay for the older people in society, like it's been forever? And the question is: will society be structured in a way that the needs of those older people is still met without that same dynamic? So yeah, maybe there will be things like the deflationary effect of technology, AI, etc., bring the cost curve down for a lot of these things.
And the adoption of hard money, Bilal.
There we go. Yeah, in at the same time, propping it all up. Exactly. No, but and it kind of actually comes back to the conversation we had last week on the UBI, Universal Basic Income, because essentially
last week would have been last month. Oh yeah.
yeah.
Actually,
Well,
might
by
be-
the time this comes out, it'll be similar. Yeah. So, well, a few weeks ago. So yeah, it's all kind of related. It's a very interesting discussion. I mean, I do think this idea like actually leads us into the next question, which is related. So I'll just read this out. So how giant tech, this is from VM. He said, recently Microsoft announced laying off 6,000 people. You think they are hiding it on, let me go back. Rafa, you can cut this from the beginning of the question. VM asked how giant tech players aren't really disclosing how disruptive AI already is and how they are able to lay people off. Recently, Microsoft announced laying off 6,000 people. Do you think they're doing this? Are they hiding it on purpose? I see comments on AI-based videos and people in comments talk about how it is getting hard to get a job in tech sector and Silicon Valley is getting bad. Seems like society is going through reversion to the mean where blue-collar jobs like electrician, plumber, etc. will survive longest because automation will have to be perfected to displace those. You think your kids should go into trades? So it's a long question.
You have
but
experience here. What are your thoughts? This is the very butcher-coded question.
blue-collar butcher, here we go.
Yeah, blue-collar butcher.
BCB.
I mean, I guess it's just barbell, right? It's like you either go all the way on the AI, like get your kids generating stormtroopers
videos.
at 3 years old, yeah. Get them on YouTube, get that distribution game up. Even though, like, I think the thing that's misunderstood there, or the thing to consider there is like the competition accelerates there way faster, right? Like, and that is why hard skills, trade, like go and do things that people rely on to survive in the real world is in. I mean, I don't even think medium term a bad advice, right? It feels like you guys have seen all the discussion around like specialized robots, or like, general purpose robots. It's like economically, it doesn't make much sense to pursue that like robot that can do anything. And again, this is me with zero understanding of the economics of these businesses.
Jack,
but
I just talked about energy for 30 minutes. You're fine, dude.
yeah, all right. So the idea that like you have the little vacuum cleaner that runs around,
Little Roomba.
yeah, is exponentially more makes exponentially more economic sense than a Tesla robot going in your cupboard, getting your Hoover out, plugging it in.
Specialist first generalist. We did a whole pod on this, Jack.
And going around. And it's like the marketing of that is just incredible in comparison, right? It's like, oh, I just got this little bloke that could do anything I want, right? If I need a fix under the sink.
This little bloke
Wait,
to
hold
do
on.
anything
I actually want
want.
to press Jack. Jack,
That's a wild statement.
this is the argument for optimists, and I actually haven't thought this through, but I love your guys' thoughts on it. The argument is that the world is built for humans, right? That's the argument.
Yeah. It's
okay.
good. I mean, it's incredible framing. I think it's great. It's just like, and like, again, my inability to forecast how vast, and maybe a good analogy is like how good Tesla got at self-driving, right?
Yeah.
It's like this thing can learn how to change pipe under your sink, but in the same way, like robots driving around Los Angeles, cars driving around Los Angeles understand how to not have accidents and get you to your destination safely. But the thing is, everybody's driving on the same roads. Not everybody's kitchen sink looks the same.
That's
But
true.
that's why you need somebody that's generalizable. You need somebody that can go to your.
Yeah, that's a good argument too. That's
You
a
need
good
a
argument
robot
too.
that
But I'm
can go
saying
to
if
your
you're trying to
storage room,
avoid that, which
your
one is
wrench.
going to take longer to figure out?
Yeah.
That's the question, right? I'm not saying I'll never be able to do it. I'm saying like,
No,
would
but
I
you bring up
rather
such a great point.
would I rather have my kid be like a slop manufacturer or a plumber?
No, dude, the visual that killed me was the
What
Optimus
sort of slop they
going
gonna be
to
cleaning
get a
up
Dyson.
either way? Sorry, Trango, I had to throw that.
No,
in.
I'm saying,
Exactly,
Bilal,
it's
how
good.
funny is that visual of an Optimus going to get the Dyson vacuum to vacuum?
Oh,
that?
that's incredible. Get the specialist. Well, no, I mean, just while we're saying this is a very specific example, and you both have kids, but so I think it's a sensitive example, but I think if you think on the curve of things that you're going to do, like a robot looking after your kid is like right on the end of the spectrum, right? I would assume, because it's the most fragile thing you love the most.
Yeah.
And so the idea of them cleaning your house like a Roomba is different to fixing a pipe versus changing a nappy of your baby. Obviously, that's insane. So like, yeah, the specialist thing there makes a bit more sense. But
What's the proposed timeline for Optimus in home? It's like 2028 or something.
I mean, let's be honest. This thing's gonna be like a decade out, man.
Yeah. So I feel like so much of this stuff is like reactionary to headlines, and I've said like so much sensationalist bullshit on this podcast that I probably disagree with. You know, one week I'm like
mark the prompt. That was a classic. That's mark the prompt from the.
I like that one.
That
though.
was good.
That's a good one.
That was good.
That some of the stuff I've said about like the job stuff, I feel like my answer changes on it every week. You know, sometimes I read someone's like, it's over. And then the next week you read something, it's like, oh no, you know what? We're going to have a bunch more marketing bullshit jobs than we are. There's plenty of jobs you could look at now as like unessential, non-essential, or like how an economy evolves to like create jobs that didn't exist 10 years ago based on the underlying technology and people's habit, like consumption and habits. So then the question becomes just like, how fast can you adapt? And that's what I need to watch this thing that Alex Karp said about this. You know, the Palantir guy?
Yeah, what do you say?
Mad dude, yeah.
It's another like thing that could just be framed as talk in your book, right? It's like AI is going to rip the fabric of society apart. And guess what? I've got a SaaS subscription for a way to monitor and protect the the fabric of society. That's very convenient, isn't it?
You got
Western society.
Yeah, Western
the
society.
citizens.
Sorry, on CNBC, where this conversation is being had, right? But the question was very like pointed around the Microsoft layoffs. I don't know how atypical that is from like a normal year of operations for them. It doesn't sound.
Yeah, and it wasn't
massive to me.
just a normal year either, right? So I think it's a
That's
lag
true, yeah,
from
yeah,
last
they
year,
got-
honestly.
yeah,
a
that's
lot of this
true.
stuff.
And one of my favorite things is like one of my favorite jokes around this that's gone around is like all of these AI companies talking about how AI is writing all the code, and then their jobs page is like got 500 jobs listed.
Yeah.
No, Claude does that. They have all these jobs listed, and they're also just like, you cannot use AI in your application.
Yeah.
Don't get high on your own supply, you know? Like, it feels like this is the biggest technology story of all time, basically, right? And in an era where everybody is consuming news through a fire hose, and the fear just extends everywhere, because just like, oh, what can this do? What can it do? Anything, everything. We talked about it with the Everything app, right? It's like, we need to create products that have infinite TAM, and then that either inspires you to go and leverage that to make something, or you quiver in fear and wait for it to replace you. And that's obviously, regardless of whether or not that's going to happen, it's a terrible strategy.
Yeah.
Dude,
I was just
that was
going to
a
add one real answer to the question itself, which was asking about, are big companies not disclosing?
Sorry, I didn't answer
no,
the 10-minute
no.
answer. I didn't answer.
No, that was great what you said. I was just saying for my answer that they're saying, like, are they not disclosing how disruptive AI is? That's one part. And then secondly, like, why they're laying people off. So just really quickly, for me, the two parts aren't, you could say they're related, and they probably are related in some ways. I would say, I don't think any of them are not saying it's disruptive. Like, most of them are saying it's in their interest to say how disruptive it is.
Depending on it being disruptive.
Exactly,
right?
yeah. Their market cap depends on it. Most of them, when you hear the interviews with Sundar, like, you know, all the CEOs of the big tech companies, except for Apple, are pretty much saying, like, the code is being written by a lot of these agents already, or like the tools already. They probably don't need to hire a bunch more engineers. They want to get more out of the ones they already have. But that's also just one type of job. That's another thing here. There's the funniest one is where those big AI companies, when you look at a lot of the jobs, they are the more people-centric jobs. It's like sales, partnerships, all the shit people think is just like bullshit jobs, which I've done. So I'm like saying that. I don't think, I don't think they are bullshit jobs, but they can be. It depends what's being talked about. But yeah, so I think
sales is a very legit job, dude.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. It's like a lot of the jobs that are being cut, there might be, like, let's say HR is an interesting one. Within the HR function, it doesn't mean everyone in HR is being replaced. But specifically, if your job was to write, the job descriptions, like the 100% now, that is being done by something that uses a template and has one person approving it versus 7 different people doing it, right? So stuff like that is like very replaceable. Even in my world, if my whole job is to just write copy for Facebook ads and emails or whatever, like some of the people I work with, they have just copywriters, which, Jack, obviously in your creative advertising world, that they're often the stars of the show, right? Like in a creative agency, the person who wrote Just Do It is the advertising person. Now, I'm not saying those guys are necessarily going away at all, but the more micro level, writing 72 different types of ad text for a Facebook ad is different. And now those platforms literally have it within there, that they give you the automated versions of it. Go on, Jack.
I was just going to say, like, I agree with that. And I think, like, the thing that I've been trying to articulate is that because the platforms will expand at that same rate, the need for people in between those processes just continues to expand too. It's like, oh, we've got to be on this, we have to plug this into this new format that now exists because this company can test and run all these different experiments and ship these new features faster. So it just feels like if everything that you plug into stays the same, you can maintain or cut your workforce, but the complexity of everything else will scale with everybody else's adoption of this stuff. So like the spaghetti gets more and more mangled, and there's more, in some ways it creates like a bigger requirement for like domain knowledge and understanding people and coordinating between people when everyone's just like one-shotting these like prompted outputs and mashing them all together. So I can again, like I said before, I can like argue both sides of this where the things that like all the activities you're doing are kind of will increase in scope and scale with the implementation of AI in all these other places. You know what I mean?
Yeah, completely. Just last thing, I'll just say on the point about why people are actually being fired. So I touched on the types of jobs, but I actually think it's so many more factors than that, and specifically like the context. Like when you zoom out, they overhired in the first place, right? Like during ZERP era, they were just like growth at any cost. They would just try. It was like the talent war. You're trying to get engineers, salespeople, etc., for your team so they don't go to Meta if you're Google or vice versa. So that was like happening for 10, 15 years, or maybe more, maybe 20 years. And then when the interest rates change and the whole world changed basically with COVID and the lag from COVID, I think a lot of this is just a knock-on effect from that already. It was already happening, like they needed to resize. And then when that also changed, it went from growth at all costs to profitable growth, showing that you've got, what was valued in the marketplace change. All the tech companies who've been growing, exponentially for 10 years on a crazy run, all their stocks got hit, and they needed to show profitability, cutting costs to the market to get their market cap back up in a positive way. And then I do think the last part is, the AI part is also a factor. So I don't think they're like necessarily hiding it. And I also don't think the reason the jobs are being cut are specifically just because of AI. I think is all those factors combined. Anything else from you, Trung or Jack?
Yeah, I got one thought that I'll share a tweet. And I agree with you, Bilal. I think multiple factors, not to say that in 5-10 years that won't be the case, which it certainly could be. But here's another theory that I think you guys will appreciate. This is from Fabian Steltzer. All right, so this is from Twitter account Fabian Steltzer. Read this. All right, he reads, here's my dark leisure theory of any potential productivity paradox in AI. Most AI use right now is bottom up and hidden. Employee first, not company first. Employees vibe code, vibe market, vibe right, and get stuff done faster. In many orgs, there's too little incentive to pass on these productivity gains by telling your manager, I found this neat tool that let me do eight hours of work in 3 hours. Give me more work. Yes, some ambitious folks do and get promotions through this, but most people aren't ambitious, just want to be left alone. Instead, those say 5 extra hours become dark leisure hours, browsing the web, being on X, Reddit, sports. Will these companies eventually get replaced by other companies? Yes, but the process will take longer than folks in our bubble expect. So this is actually the reverse of the question that was asked. It was not saying are people going to, it's actually people are using this and becoming more productive, but they're just spending that time to dick around on the internet.
That's a good point. It's not a direct link. Like you cut your hours and automatically they replace you. It's more of there's a lag. And that's a great point. It definitely takes way longer for like general society to even understand what's happening, let alone companies, big bureaucratic companies. Like the example I've used many times on here is you ask a random person on the street what internet browser is, like 6 out of 10 probably still don't even know what it is. They like think of the E icon on Internet Explorer and stuff like that. Like just to know what advanced AI mode, voice mode is, and the nuance of that, or like what, all the different things we cover on here, that's not happening for most people. So yeah, it's
I think ChatGPT is a like maybe a what's the word I'm looking for, like paradigm shift in adoption, at least.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, definitely.
Just from what I see, like this Instagram stuff I see, and even like, people outside of technology world that I see using that for all sorts of stuff, is like, it's such a viral product in that sense, where like people use it for like, oh, my toddler did this, what shall I do? And then like every other parent they speak to, they'll be like, I got this from here. It's like, you wouldn't endorse Google in the same way, Yeah. Like you might say like, oh, I found this website or this person that has really good writing on this stuff. But I feel like, and maybe that's mostly outside of professional settings for now, right? It's like people maybe don't that is the gap that he's describing too, which is like the ability to prompt for your work output is not necessarily the same as like retrieving information that people would use as a better version of a search engine or a therapist, which feel like the number 1 and 2 use cases for it, and probably will be by far and away the biggest use cases. Like
the therapy.
It's like the social media create versus consume model. I feel like it's like pull information versus produce something. Yeah, who knows?
Wait, how would that relate to? Because I agree on the therapy part, or like some sort of reflection back to you, whether it's therapy or not. But like, where does that fit in the create versus consume part?
I'm saying I'm saying things that are not in service of like producing something for someone else.
Oh,
the
got
vast
you. Yeah,
majority of the use case is
taking
just like a personal
yourself.
information inquiry. Yeah,
Got you.
And I feel like
that's a good
most
point.
people's relationship with technology is that, and our corner of Twitter and like Trung misattributing or not attributing videos on Reddit.
Yeah.
It's the same idea, right? It's like majority of people see that and be like, that's cool. Not like, let me go buy the course to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, let me go and make memes on the internet or create VR videos. You're right. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. And I think that's why they have such a massive advantage too, because they're like massively leaning into it. Even if you see their content on Instagram, ChatGPT, it's like, I just had this argument. What shall I say back? Or like, how do I get the NBA explanation analogy for this thing that just happened to me? So
best is when people say, explain this in a patois accent. That is my favorite.
Exactly.
That is the
Grok.
best.
Hey, Grok, is this real?
Hey, Grok, yeah. Well, actually, a next question, which is related to this, as it relates to us and our, in air quotes, job right now, which is podcasting. Laurie asks, future of podcasting in the age of AI. Essentially, like, what do you see as the future of podcasting in the age of AI? I'm just going to give my 30 seconds or so on it if you guys need time to think. I think we've kind of discussed this before, but in an age of unlimited information, unlimited AI slop, the cream will rise to the top, and the verified opinion of someone you trust will become the scarce resource. So I do think if you're a writer, you do visualize value, or you do podcasting or anything where you create content, I think if you are using the tools to create better, higher quality content, you're going to win either way, and you'll probably win at a higher level. There will still be a massive segment of the internet, including us, who will consume AI style content, and we already are right now. And that might be like, the what's the Google one, the thing it makes a Notebook LM, where it makes the podcast for you. Now look, that was like a really fun kind of cool use case, and that's obviously inning one of that form factor or whatever, that factor of sorry, we've been doing 3 hours, my brain's gone down there.
Basically a use
format
case
of content, exactly.
Yeah. But also gimmicky. I haven't touched it since.
Yeah. But the idea of, I agree. But the idea of like AI generated stuff is going to be way better. Like there are people already using it for, like you said, vlogs previously we talked about, and definitely for advanced level podcasts. Like the advanced ChatGPT I was listening to yesterday, if you put that in a podcast, it would be quite hard for most people to tell that it was AI, I think. And again, it's going to get a lot better. So let's say it was a history podcast, and it was like saying two people based on facts, like, or
dude, you have the original. You have Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton actually arguing in a podcast format.
That would be sick. Yeah.
No, but Bilal, this is the thing. We're probably a year away from that happening, and I love that you brought that up, because just to summarize, I completely agree with what Bilal said. It's the entire thesis of this podcast, right? It's like audience first, and people trust people. And I think ultimately it's going to be hard to replicate that. But to Bilal's point, it's getting... So for people who missed it, this is probably a month ago we did the episode, Bilal was talking about this new ChatGPT audio model. And Bilal, you said that it had like the ums and the
the human... the little subtleties of a conversation you have, the way you speak. It's massive change. I've noticed it straight away. I don't know if I might be hyper aware of that stuff too, because I'm like a sound person, also podcast. So like I think I notice stuff like that maybe a little bit more than average person, but still, I think if you are used to listening to the regular one and listen to that, you'll notice the difference. I only used it once, honestly, for about 20 minutes, so I don't know how much better it is in terms of the content, but like the style of it was definitely way more like
Bilal, let me round this off with one thought, and then we'll get Jack's podcast on this. There's a great Substack article by a person named, I want to make sure I get his name right, Ryan Karuna. He coined something, which I love your guys' thoughts on. He calls it liquid content. And basically the point he's trying to make is that you can basically take any type of content now and turn it into any other medium, right? You can turn a book into, in a few years, you'll probably turn a book into short form videos with Google VO, right? You can take now a PDF, turn that into, as Bilal said, a podcast with Notebook LM. You could take a history book and probably have that turn into a podcast eventually with the original historical voices done, all done by the AI. And Sundar Pichai actually said this on the Decoder podcast. He says, listen, Gemini is multimodal by default. It can understand text, video, audio, image. And that's how you should think about the future. And the point about liquid content that Ryan was trying to make in the Substack was, I think we're scratching the surface, and I'll throw some red meat to Jack because I know he's a Marshall McLuhan guy. The idea of the message, the medium being the message, right? Like, take a book, for example. This is the most salient example for me. Me reading a book on my phone versus reading a book, just a physical book, two completely different experiences. The medium is intermediating the experience. With a book, as we joked about last week,
the retention
reading.
is.
I'm actually thinking only about the book. With my phone, completely fractured concentration, retaining maybe 1% of it. So the medium dictates, is as important as the actual message itself, right? And the example that Ryan brings up, and I'll pass this off to Jack, was he's like, look what happened to audiobooks when Spotify offered it as part of their app. So Spotify obviously originally was music only and then turned into podcast, but it's streaming. So here's a behavior different he identified. In Audible, you get 1 credit. What happens if you get 1 credit? You're probably going to spend that credit a month on a known quantity. But when you have books now in a streaming format on Spotify, and it's all you can eat for the month, right? You might dabble around. You might try a minute here, 10 minutes there. You see what I'm saying? It's like the changing of that medium completely changes the behavior of the content.
Reminds me a bit, Trung, of when Drake specifically started making what people were calling streaming music, right? Lots of other people, I'm sure, did it as well. But he was the king of the game at the time, and he was making because it was like kind of gaming the numbers a little bit, but also like the format is more about I'm streaming this. It's not like old school where you go and buy a CD or a record before that, and you go into Virgin Megastore or whatever, and you put on the headphones and you hang out with your friends, and you're like, oh, that's a record. I'm going to listen from back to front. This is like short attention span, streaming. There's going to be singles that are going to smash for the summer. It kind of changes the style of the art form in a way, right? So it'd be interesting. Books feels quite untouched in that way compared to movies, series on TV. Obviously, have changed with Netflix binge watching style. So yeah, that's interesting on the books. I didn't really think of that. It's kind of like the untouched.
Well, dude, think about it, right? Let's ask Jack about it. Bilal, take your favorite history book. They'll turn it into a 10-part podcast. That'd be incredible.
Yeah.
Butcher.
Definitely.
Medium is the message. Liquid content. Podcasting as a future, and AI. Thoughts?
I agree with, I think, everything you guys said. The idea that like dead internet theory, bot production of content, like by definition, if you're doing something quote unquote by hand or manually, then it's getting more scarce even as more people come online. So feels to me like I think there's like some very unquantifiable moat about that, right? There's like people who you like listening to regardless of their whether it's for entertainment or knowledge or whatever, like people maybe extrapolate some of these trends sometimes based on like purely rational reasons, and none of this is rational. Like anybody listening to this is not a rational person. Like this is not a rational decision.
Just Trump just told me about global energy policy. Like Jesus Christ, I'm literally
just,
the 4 billionth most qualified person.
Not even as a joke, which we like to make about the inaccuracies of this stuff. It's like so much of like why you read someone's writing or why you listen to someone or subscribe to whatever it is they make is like completely based on these unquantifiable things. So I think people extrapolate that. I got to drop a Sailorism every episode, but the last part of the episode we did with him, and this quote has always stuck with me. It's like, everybody's trying to get something for nothing, right? Like the idea that you could put your voice into some model and then have it make content from scratch and have, build an audience and make people care about it. It's like, that's not how any of this works, right? It's about showing up for hundreds, thousands of repetitions and carving out your own unique perspective and, being reliable in some sense, right? Being consistently yourself is the thing that's interesting and scarce, rather than like the amount of shit you can produce by like spamming an LLM. And I don't think I've seen anything sort of prove that otherwise. Even if people are using LLMs cleverly, it's like because the set of experiences they've had previously give them some unique spin on those combination of things. Like the Star Trooper guy probably comes back. I don't know. I can't remember the details. Probably has background in comedy writing or filmmaking or something else. And it's like how those tools are being leveraged that make it interesting. I forget the last tail end of the question. You said,
AI, how will it affect, and it sounds like you're kind of echoing what Bilal said.
I think a lot. I just agree broadly with everything that was said. Like I think there will be these standout like AI specific things, but the vast majority of connection is based on this human to human thing, and we've overlooked that massively sometimes, and that's where all the interesting and fun and worthwhile things come from. Ultimately, this is like an exchange between people, right? Even commerce on the internet functions because one person has something that somebody else wants, and maybe you can produce that with a large language model, but for the most part, I think podcasting as a medium is not that at all, right? It's kind of the other end of the spectrum from like solve my immediate problem. It's actually the opposite of that, because it's like listen to my podcast forever. The idea that you come back every week to this thing, it's not like a product that your sink is broken, fix my sink, and then hopefully I never have to call you again. It's like an irrationally consumed product over a long period of time. So we'll be doing this. It's a long way of saying that NIA will continue to be recorded, no matter how sophisticated OpenAI's models get.
It'll just be called NAI. There you go.
Yeah, that's good. Hey, by the way, have you seen those? There's the memes of like, the one that pops into my head is like, says AI is going to replace me. I'd like to see AI drink 11 beers before 3 p.m. Right?
11 a.m. Try me.
Which is the same, like, it's a stupid example, but it's the same idea, right? It's like
it is the same. I was going to just add last thing, Jack, to what you said there. It's like we're talking about podcasting as this one big thing, like it's the same thing. And when you go a layer deeper, it's like there's different types of podcasts. There's interview style, there's educational versus entertainment. And so to me, the summary is educational. There's a lot more chance that you can get a good enough version of like retelling of history, let's say, in an it doesn't have to be Theo Von funny, but it could be, an interesting format where someone can actually take in a 30 to 45 minute podcast about, whatever historical event or a series of events. Whereas the type that we do, 3 people chatting into a mic talking rubbish, is a little bit like harder to replicate at the moment. Maybe that will change, but and the real high end, like Theo Von off the cuff saying something insane, that I think is honestly, humor, actually, all jokes aside, I think is the hardest like test of AI. Like it's nowhere near
ever.
Yeah, exactly. And like, so that level of entertainment, also the connection you have with those people by this point, I think is baked in. So I don't think that necessarily goes away. So that, again, it's all about supply and demand. What is scarce? And in this case, I think if you've got that, like obviously us on a tiny scale, but like the people that we've, spoken to or met in person who listen to the pod, you're like, man, they know so much about what's going on, stuff we've said, stuff we forget we've even said. And that can, even the ones I listen to most, it's like, you feel like you know those people. So it's very different to, I know this AI voice talking to me. I guess the interesting question, open question is, if you didn't know it was AI and you start to build a liking for the AI voice and you've never even seen that person, and you're like, Jimmy from the history podcast on like Vietnam's history is so good. Like he's so knowledgeable. It's like he knows everything in the world. Yeah. And it's
I wonder if one slip up though would catch it.
That's
like
true.
If you misremember one detail in a profound enough way, the whole illusion shatters.
That's
right?
a good point. Whereas a human, you give them grace, like we do every week. We mess stuff up all the time.
Yeah, but I don't even mean mess up. I mean, like not even mess up as like misremember, or like it would be like a fundamental thing about you changes, right? Like the wrong piece of training data gets injected, and it like the thing that's coming to my head for some reason is like you misremember where you're from or something, or you like state with conviction something that is like runs counter to the last 100 times you said it.
Yeah.
And not then going back and be like, I got that wrong, or like maybe this stuff gets sophisticated enough, but I'm saying like there's this massive risk buildup in doing something like that without revealing it, because eventually it gets, I think that happened a couple of times with music, right? People made these AI songs and then there's like a certain characteristic about it where people notice that and they largely reject it.
What is it? The M dash? It's the M dash of podcasting. For the listeners who don't know, M dash is apparently a giveaway and also a Lindy Man classic.
Oh, like the long, yeah. When people
see a lot of M dashes there.
Yeah. In the email with the kind regards at the end. But yeah, no, that was a giveaway as well.
But
all right, boys, I feel
great, guys.
Anything else before we wrap up? Thanks for listening, everyone. We've got, honestly, some of the best AMA questions we've had in a long time. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, about like 7 or 8.
Yeah, we'll
do one more. And to give you a quick preview so you're locked in, our mental health, physical health, financial health routines, whatever routine means in that regard. If we were on a desert island, how we'd make $1,000. Amazing question from Elena. Domains and value usernames.
Yeah.
And some shiny object
OnlyFans
stuff. Yeah, OnlyFans, exactly. Spelled PHAN.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Perfect. All right, everyone. Thanks for being here. Hope you're enjoying the summer vibes. We'll see you guys next week. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Peace.